Good evening and welcome to another episode of The Hard Truth. Today, we'll be looking at the dire economic situation the country is facing. Now, it is without doubt that we are in difficult times. Food prices are rising, fuel and transport fares have increased significantly. Businesses are suffering and many Ghanaians are struggling to survive. Things got so worse that government had to go to the IMF for assistance. Confidence in the government to deal with this crisis or these crises are quite low. But the finance minister, in his media report budget review speech, said that government will chart a sustainable course that will restore and improve macroeconomic stability, expand growth activities, economic growth activities, create jobs, and strengthen Ghana's resilience to future external shocks. The question is, can the government really deliver on this, or is just a mere rhetoric? Coming all the way to Enak Studios to answer these questions, my guest for tonight is Honorable Ken Ofori-Atta, the Minister for Finance. You are watching The Hard Truth. My name is Nana Akosua Konadu Asante-Samuels. Do I call you Kennedy or Mr. Minister or whichever? Ken, welcome to The Hard Truth.
Thank you very much,
Right.
Akosua. I'm Kenneth, actually.
Okay.
But you know, Nana Yao Kuntun
Ah, I see. But I've always wanted to ask you, what's in that green bag? What's in it?
Green bag.
Right.
That's, all of government's or Ghana's woes and problems to be solved.
So if someone snatches this bag away from me, I'm in trouble.
I will be in trouble.
Yeah. Anyway, so Ghana is currently facing lots of, economic crisis, and it's been a very tough period for Ghanaians, especially in the last 6 months.
Yeah.
And it appears government have, lost confidence in your ability to lead Ghanaians out of this crisis. And, some are calling for your resignation as a minister. Mm-hmm. Have you failed as a finance minister?
I don't know, because I mean, if we are in very difficult, sort of unprecedented global times, and I would imagine that you would know between the COVID pandemic, between the Ukraine invasion of Russia, by Russia, and then
Ken, before the pandemic, we were already heading into troubled waters. We were over borrowing without, getting value for money. And one would say COVID just pushed us into the hole that we already dug for ourselves. Am I right?
Is it true?
Yeah.
Based on what statistics?
No, but you can't say that. I mean, even World Bank's director said that we had that before.
No, I mean, how do you talk about that when you have growth rates of 6 or 7%?
That's on paper. And we were not feeling it in our pockets. Why do you do that a lot? It's like you come up with your figures and you expect us to accept it. On paper, it's growing, but we are all, including myself, we are all saying that the economy is tough, and we blame it so much on the Ukraine war. We blame it so much on the pandemic. But before that, things were still tough.
I'm trying to figure out where we were in 2016. I'm sure you remember.
I'm listening.
About 3.4% growth, the lowest in our history. And then in an IMF program that we inherited, that's also clear to you. A deficit way beyond 6-7% that we had.
You knew all these. You knew all these figures. You told us you were still going to make our lives better. So does it matter what you inherited? We were looking forward.
Of course, it matters what it inherited.
But you told us.
But then what happened?
You told us we're going to make things better, sir.
Yeah, and things were not better. I mean, we have over 1.2 million kids now in senior high school. You used to pay for. We had teachers' allowances, never had. We had nurses' allowances, you never had. We had a stable macro environment.
Ghanaians are experiencing falling real incomes, paying over, 11 Ghana cedi for prices. Paying so much for food and transport. I'm not.
Okay, so why don't we be quite systematic about that?
I'm listening.
And then do not deny the facts of the matter as opposed to the sentiment. So clearly, between 2016 and 2019 through 2020, We had an economic environment that was par none in the past 10 or 15 years. That's a fact of the matter. And therefore, the trajectory for growth was as we saw it. There's no question about the number of people on school feeding and the number of people who went to school, our health infrastructure, and employment. I think we have about maybe 300,000 people that we employed into the civil service between education and health, over that period, and the security services. So those are real. I mean, the question as to then
I
what
thought
happened.
it's a total, what's it called? You're looking at the economy in its totality. Again, let's look at this now.
Yeah.
Fuel prices have gone up. I said that earlier.
So what are you now talking about? Are you talking about post-COVID? I mean, now that we have settled, that things were quite different.
No, but I need you to change that point.
No.
You still dwell on it so much, and it's unfair.
You cannot
it's
pretend.
Unfair, Ken.
You cannot pretend that data is wrong when there is data.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying that before COVID, we still had issues, but COVID just pushed us into it further.
How do you not have issues when you inherited what you inherited?
But you told us.
Are you going to acknowledge?
We have issues, Ken.
Are you going to acknowledge that things were much better?
That's how come we voted for a new government.
Great.
Expecting things to improve.
And nothing has improved? You are looking at me in the eye and saying that nothing has improved? And you are looking
at me in the eye, in the eye of Ghanaians, 30.8 million people, and you're telling us that, things are better than before. 11 cedis for fuel prices. I mean, sometimes you just walk past the fuel sim like, yeah, you don't know how much or when next is going to increase.
Okay,
do you care? Do you care about the plight of Ghanaians, sir?
That is a really unfair question.
Why?
And I think it's really difficult for me to listen to you, for you to say that. But the fact of the matter is that we were on a trajectory of growth, and I believe the numbers indicate that. Our debt issues were increasing because we had to finance all of these social interventions, which are real. Then we had the COVID intervention. And the COVID intervention, believe me, there were maybe 6.3 million deaths globally. Africa had 250,000. Ghana had 1,400,000. I mean, the assumption, a period in which teachers might have been home for 9 months, in which they were paid. Most countries laid them off. The whole civil service of 650,000 people were kept with salaries. That must mean something. A period of difficulty, of lockouts, where therefore we're able to supply electricity and water to people. I mean, it's really difficult for me to pretend, in a sense, that we haven't had a cataclysmic event beyond the past 100 years, and for you to say that nothing has happened.
You're not saying.
So you had an issue
that is not the point,
of Africa having a minus 3% growth, and Ghana was able to eke out a 0.4% growth. So let's acknowledge, but there's no question that things are difficult, and things are difficult globally. And I mean, I'm sure if you're reading, you'll also know that whether it's the US or the UK or whatever, I mean, inflation has increased about fourfold. Okay, the truth of the matter is that when you have $70 per barrel of crude and goes as high as 133, and it's now averaging about 105, it's problematic. When our import content, is much higher than our neighbors, that's problematic.
And whose fault is that?
How can that be anybody's fault when it's structural? And the question is, how do you change that structural element within a certain period? You inherit a banking system that is near collapse. We spend about 25 billion. Now banks are much stronger than they were. We introduced Development Bank, $750 million.
Talking about the banks, why didn't you strengthen them? I mean, why didn't you strengthen some of the local banks, and you had to just make all of them go, or
it's really tried to say just let them go. When you go to a bank and you cannot get withdrawal of your money, that's problematic. When 4.6 million depositors' monies, are on the line,
but couldn't you have injected in funds to help them? You want to look at local content.
Well, the local content, what do you have? So we created CBG, Consolidated Bank, and put all of them in there. That's local content. The issue of not responding to rules and regulations, we have to be in a nation of rules. Nobody can just get up, start a bank, the bank is not doing well, and then you can't get your money back, and you say, let's keep them going on. I mean, those are hard decisions. And
we'll still come back to this question, but you presented a media budget review for a few days ago.
I thought that's what we're going to talk about.
I know that's what we're going to talk about now. Okay. Promising to turn things around. How exactly will this budget address the concerns of the ordinary Ghanaian for the next 6 months?
Yeah. So what do we have? We have, first of all, you have to accept where we are in the global economy. You can't pretend that we are immune to that crisis. Once we do that, then the question is, how do you, within that framework, manage yourself out of crisis? And I guess I need to remind you that we did inherit an IMF crisis when we came into government. And within 2 1/3 months, years, we were able to extricate ourselves out of that. So we've been able to do that before. And during that period is also when we brought in all of our flagship programs, which really led to, it's amazing the kind of impact you have when you're able to finance people to go through high school and give people hope for that. I don't know why you came.
So at the end of the 6 months, what do we hope the budget would achieve?
Well, the issue, as we have put forward, is that we're going to move towards a 6.6% deficit, which will be quite strong, eke out a primary balance of 0.4%, which means that we are beginning to look at debt sustainability, to pursue our YouStart program, which is to create about 1 million jobs over the next 3 years. And
but
that's what we are going to launch.
Right, but the minority also describes, or many of us describe the budget as empty. Some expect analysts have also expressed doubt about the credibility of this budget. By the end of this year, again, what would you have achieved with it?
What do you mean by the credibility of the budget?
If it's not really addressing the needs of us,
what is it supposed to address that it's not addressing?
Did you cut the fuel prices? No.
So
was there any cuts on that?
Your question.
So again,
then becomes,
how is it going to, or how is it going to affect our life
really,
at the end of 6 months?
Ms. Konadu, is that whether we want to bury our head in the sand?
Why is that?
So when a barrel of crude moves from 70 to 103, that could not be Ghana or any country's fault, but we do need to import that. So we have to manage that. There was an imminent crisis with regards to cost of living allowances, and we came through a couple of weeks ago with a 15% increase. The issue of sacrifice and hardship given the global milieu, I think is prominent, and it's quite dispiriting when knowledgeable people pretend that the world is the same as it is. The question then becomes that how do you now structurally change our economy such that our import content comes much lower than it has been, which will be important to then work against inflation. But amidst all of that is how do we increase our own revenue and ensure that the issue of jobs are tackled. And this is where
YouStart is going to do that.
And YouStart is going to be a very important intervention for that.
Right, but you have revised the economic growth rate from 5.8% to 3.7%.
That's correct.
How do you, react to concerns that the 3.7% growth estimate is overly ambitious and unrealistic?
Well, that's really realistic for
Really?
us because we have been able to do 7% before. But that's also pretty honest about it, revising it downwards given the exigencies that we are
But
experiencing.
Fitch also said that Ghanaian economy is expected to record a real growth, of 2.6%. The reasons for this figure has been that the inflation is rising, currency is weakened, and among other factors. So again, is 3.7% realistic?
And we believe it is, yeah. And that's what we are going to look to try to achieve. I mean, we've done 7% before. Even in the COVID time, we did 0.4 as Africa was minus 2.7. The way in which we are going to apply our resources in terms of SME growth and employment, we expect that would be able to help us achieve that. So that's important. And then, of course, the issue, I think the understanding of how we'll find resources to be able to generate SME support is really crucial to the way we are going. And therefore, the Ghana Cares program, where we are looking for subsidies for things like poultry, rice, etc., to reduce our import content is going to be important because that impacts inflation. The way in which the entrepreneurial program is going to be launched and ensure that people get more entrepreneurial in what they do.
So all this will contribute to 3.7.
All of that should contribute to the 3.7.
But before the budget review, many expected you to, ask for a supplementary budget, but you didn't ask for more money. What informed that decision?
I didn't.
Why?
Simply because, as you realize, when we realized that things were difficult globally, and therefore issues of fuel prices that you are talking about, we went ahead with some expenditure cuts of about 30% of discretionary income. And that has been really helpful with regards to reducing, therefore, our expenditures. With regards
30% of your what?
Of our discretionary expenditure. And that has been able to help with regards to bringing that down. And then, of course, with regards to revenue is coming down from, I think, 100 billion to 96 billion due to the measures that have not totally panned out. And we're very upfront of that. But so that will then enable that window.
We are not meeting our revenue target. Interest rate payments have increased from, 37.5 billion
to
Ghana cedis to 41.1 billion.
That's correct.
So you will be paying, 15% cost of living allowances to workers, which wasn't even part of the budget anyway. So how are you again going to pay for all these?
Well, the issue that comes up really is that if you look at our revenue measures, where we move down to 96.8 billion, that clearly shows a reduction of about 3.7 billion. That's revenue. Expenditures went up from 137, from 135.7 to 135.7, and so that is also helpful. And so between that, you have a sense of our compensations going up, as you mentioned. You have our interest charges going up, as you mentioned, and then you have other issues that came up to that gap. But then when we go to issues of grants and statutory funds, etc., that also came down because revenues were down. Goods and services, as I mentioned, came down by about 3.3 billion. CapEx, another 2.7 billion or so. So within that context is where we then remain within the appropriation.
So 3.7 is so realistic?
It's very realistic for us.
Right.
And then I guess more importantly is our ability then to see how we can enhance our revenue measures with the new EVAT that we are proposing, property taxes that we are bringing into play, etc.
We'll talk about all that after the break. You're still watching The Hard Truth. Do stay on. Be right back. Welcome back to The Hard Truth. Minister for Finance, Kenneth Ofori-Atta, is still here. Ken, it seems government places a lot of premium on the windfall from the upstream petroleum sector. How much windfall are we, getting, and what kind of impact would that make or have on government expenditure plans?
Yeah, I think that's really helpful in the sense of about, we move from an expectation of maybe $62 per barrel and have now ramped it up to about $94 per barrel, maybe giving us about $500 million more, which would be really helpful in plugging the gap that we have lost in revenue over the period. We went through a budget that we passed in November, and it really took us about 5 or 6 months to be able to get all our revenue measures through, which created a very difficult situation and for us. So this really is going to be a helpful injection into the way in which we manage our resources going.
I see. Government is currently faced with serious, fiscal deterioration and manifestation of the reserves positions of the country. We are running out of hard currency to pay for our external obligations and our imports. Where do we stand with our international and foreign exchange reserves?
Yeah. That's a very good question. And because as you realize, one, due to the downgrade and due to the delays that we had in Parliament, and we were not able to go to the international capital markets, which we have consistently done in the past 5 years, about $2-3 billion or so. So that created a hole that needs to be filled. Recently, we got through Parliament $750 million.
For example.
That will be helpful towards that. We need to continue to pursue other sources.
Well, you're looking to the IMF, and you talked about AFISM just now.
Yeah.
You loan to address our balance of payment issues in the short term.
Right.
But it's been argued that there's not, or in the short term, or this is going to be short-term fixes. But from your projections, what should we expect, or how do we secure these funds?
Well, the issue really is we have gone to the IMF. That's true, and therefore
but it will take a long time to get these monies.
Well, it's 6
together
months.
With Africa.
The reasons for going to the IMF, one, is that we wanted to get back access to international capital markets and also work with friendly sovereign countries who would be interested in supporting various papers that we will be able to issue. So given that we've gone to the fund, that opens the way for that type of negotiation and a sense of calmness to investors that we may be able to return to the market.
So you said it's going to take 6 months. AFISM, I'm not sure you even started the conversation. You started the conversation right now on 10 papers, so it's going to take some months to actually, get that money. So in the short term, in the interim,
for that, and we expect within the next week or two to have that resource, and then continuing now of a lot more vim and vigor, given the relationship that we have with IMF, to be able to now convince other sources of financing for that. We've done it. It's not like you're a government that is trying.
Ken,
it's a government
you say this a lot. We've done it, but really, and I say this, and you tell me, Akosua, I'm not being fair to you.
I never use the word fair. I'm just saying that unless you are discounting the reality of what is going on in the world,
no one is.
And that's impact
but if a
on
manager
our economy.
If a businessman says that I'm going to do X, Y, Z, I think that they put their minds to it to actually make profits. So we put you there to actually do these things for us. But I don't want us to, dwell much more on that. Let's move on to E-levy. It's instructive that you didn't touch on E-levy in the media budget review, considering the fact that before the implementation, you and the president made statements to the effect that you account for the monies collected. Let me ask you, Kenneth, how much have we accrued so far from E-levy?
E-levy has really revealed certain weaknesses that occurred in terms of that tax handle. And there's no question in my mind that given where our economy is going, E-levy is one of those tax handles that's going to play a key, important role in the way in which we manage our revenue resources.
How much have we accrued from E-levy?
So far, the expectation was about 500, 600 million a month. We had, by the time we went through this fight between November and March 29th, when it was finally passed, we had now had to make way for a lot of exemptions, which really then impacted that. So in looking at the anatomy of E-levy, the realization now was that about 70% of the resources that would have garnered from that, we gave exemptions to merchants and banks, etc., and that has to be looked at. Then another 20% or so with regards to how agents work and how banks were also given exemptions. So really this period, so we've been getting literally about 10% of what we were scheduled to get over that period.
10%?
So 10% of that.
So
we
many were
really
expecting,
need to now
so if
look,
it's 10%, sir, many were expecting a review of the E-levy, looking at the facts that government is not realizing the monies like you just mentioned.
That's
expected.
correct.
Shouldn't there be a review, or shouldn't the review be done immediately?
Of course it has to be done, and that is being done. The question is whether you rush it or not. Exemptions are going to have to be looked at, and we'll
Are
look
we going
at them
to reduce from 1 to 0.5 or something?
I'm not sure whether there's a calculus that we have to do. The question really is whether the exemptions...
Don't you think that it's too high? And if it's like
0.5,
more people, especially unbanked,
I don't know that it's too high or not.
Be interested in it?
I don't know that it's too high. We're starting at 1.75, in which we brought it down to 1.5, and then we also got the issue...
But have you heard that many Ghanaians say that 1.5 is too high?
Any new tax that is brought is always to be too high. Who wants to pay taxes? Any tax is too high. We, of course, are going to examine, first of all, we have to examine leakages and exemptions to be very clear that those can be eliminated before you start thinking about reducing rates also. So those
again,
exemptions...
Don't you also think that if you reduce it...
I don't know.
Have you tried it?
I have. I moved from 1.75 to 1.5. I don't know that your number is the correct number for it.
But the issue for us, sir, for a government who says victory is the Lord's, and as Papa B, we see you as a listening government. But now it's like you are not listening. You are so bent on doing the things you want to do. If Ghanaians are calling for 0.5%, of course, no one is comfortable paying high tariffs or high taxes. But if the people are calling for a reduction, why don't you give us that?
I went around the country myself also.
Say it again.
I mean, talking about, so assuming you send, 1,000 CDs by transfer, what is 1.5% of that?
That's a lot.
No, I mean, 10% of 1,000 CDs is 100.
Yes, it's
100 CDs.
Yeah.
And 1% of that is 10 CDs. So you send 1,000 CDs.
How much profit am I making for my business?
You give government...
How much profit am I making?
No, hold on a second. You give government 10 CDs for all of these roads.
I give government 10 cities. My roads are not fixed. I think the problem is not paying 1 point.
You don't want to
give
government 10 cities. It's not about that,
sir. It's about, we want to pay, but we don't see the development. Look at our roads now. You used my road when coming here, but look at the state of our roads.
I mean, are you honestly saying that between 2017 and now, as you drive around this country, roads have not improved? I
am honestly saying that. I think you can do better because we put you in power.
We can do better
put you in power
as we
to
continue,
do some of these things for us.
As we continue to raise...
What is happening? Look at the hinterlands. Several roads and look at what happened in Swami last time, with the minister. People are so unhappy because the roads are horrible and it's everywhere. So if again,
So which roads?
1.5, my road, Kwabenya Road, sorry to reply, yes,
great.
you use it
I
today.
used it to come
Right,
here.
and it's
and
horrible.
you have also seen the roads you drive on before you get to your road.
Yes.
So some things have been done.
No, but
or those are not to be acknowledged.
It's not about that. We are saying that
It's
no,
not
you
about-
can't
how
start
do you expect, with your revenue resources
Right.
and what you have and your intent on not paying for those roads to be done?
I think you are just doing you are doing some and neglecting others. I mean, from that's your demeanor now.
We can't do everything, but you can have a program.
So why don't you
that.
employ people in the area? So you've seen my road, very bad road. So you want to create more employment. Why don't you empower the youth or some people to just fix it and give them something?
Yeah, but that's going on. Aren't we fixing roads?
No, you're not speeding enough. Yeah, just it's at a very slow pace.
So we'll look to accelerate that.
You have to. But what are the targets for the E-levy for the second half of the year, and what remedial measures are you adopting to ensure you achieve the targets?
Brought it down to about 611 million as we work through these issues of exemptions, so that hopefully by the November budget we'll be clear on the direction of E-levy. But E-levy for me still constitute a tax handle that is going to be important for this country going forward, because we are going to be a e-commerce driven economy, and therefore digitalization is going to be...
Kenneth, E-levy was brought so that we didn't go to, IMF. You brought the E-levy so that we won't go to the IMF. Now we have to, or we've gone to the IMF. So is the E-levy a failed intervention? Would you withdraw it?
How can it be a failed intervention? I mean, when you have almost 1 trillion cedis going through that platform on an annual basis, and when you have literally 18 or 20% of Ghanaians paying taxes, and E-levy will capture everybody to participate in this transformation that we are talking about.
Do you think more people are paying taxes now?
More people would be paying taxes as we get these exemptions
out. Based on what? How do you know more people will pay taxes?
How would you, when you have transactions moving from maybe 78 billion to almost 1 trillion cedis, it means people are using that platform, and that's a lot of us all using that platform. And so putting a tax on that intervention would ensure that more people participate.
I'll say this on the hard truth,
but
and I would like you to go with it. I mean, can you consider reducing it again further?
Everything, can be assessed, but it has to be assessed within reason. But more importantly, let's look at eliminating the exemptions, see where that goes before we move. And the analysis, for 1,000 cedis, for you to be paying what? 10. A CD 50 or 1050. Come on.
And it's a lot.
What is it?
But let's just move on.
So why would you not want to use that to help us develop our transformation?
If we pay and you use the money to develop, no one has a problem. But we don't see the development we expect, on the pace that we expect to see. Some roads have been abandoned for years. But
have you looked at the resource envelope and the issue of how we have maintained senior high school? How we have paid allowances.
We'll talk about senior high schools in a bit. We'll talk about that in a bit. But the expectations that the government will review some flagship programs considering the tough situation we find ourselves. But you have stated that free SHS and TVET will continue. Why is government reluctant to review the free SHS policy?
I think efficiencies will certainly be looked at. But really, I don't know where you went to school. But
Asante girls.
But for me, coming from Chebi government school to the blessings of going to Achimota, indicates to me that the opportunities for most people are very high, and it is incumbent on government to ensure that opportunity is given so that there will be more people like us.
The executive director, I get that, but the executive director for Africa Educational Watch suggests that, we are spending more than $2 a day per person in secondary school. But globally, the average amount should be 1.2. There are concerns that's $1.2. So I would say there are concerns that we are not spending efficiently. Shouldn't we explore options, on cutting the elements of ESHS policy?
No, I think the whole issue of education and health need to be examined, whether it's free SHS or whether it's school feeding or whether it's books or whether it's boarding and the supply of food. I mean, I think those efficiencies should be looked at. But in terms of the fact of the matter, that we should give every Ghanaian the opportunity to go through senior high school.
Without doubt.
I think that
so
has
what are
be
you doing
questioned.
exactly? So what are you doing to review it? Are we going to even see a review at all?
Yeah, this is all, Ministry of Education, and we have a really dynamic minister in that regard, and we are very confident
And
that
government
he'll
has the
make sure.
funds to sustain without reviewing it. Do you have the funds for it now?
I mean, with all programs that you have, you are constantly evaluating to make sure there are efficiencies, so those will be done. The issue is a fundamental issue of are we going to keep senior high school? And we just want to assure all Ghanaians that that is not going to be adulterated in any way. It's important. And it's only when you have your kids not being able to go and the changes that occur when they have that opportunity that you build up that human capital.
When are we seeing the document
future.
on down, the review document? I mean, is it going to happen anytime soon? And which aspect of it are they going to review?
In a world in which the global exigencies are so bad, in a government that through COVID did more than most governments, and for us to be sitting here today.
We applaud you. We are not saying you've
This is the first time I'm hearing you saying that.
No, we applaud
actually.
you. I mean, we applaud you for some of the things you've done. COVID was great. I mean, I was enjoying double of my electricity bills and all of that. That's fine. But we are talking about
now we have to go forward. Is that correct?
Exactly, speeding it.
So the question then began, and I think that's really sort of positive engagement, acknowledging what has been done, what current government did during the COVID period to make sure.
Don't blame everything on COVID. Okay? Don't blame it on Ukraine, Russia war. Don't blame it on COVID. Ken, you are the government in power. Just do something. We are suffering. No, your people are suffering, and it's unfair. Are you going to go to them again in 2024? Campaign for us on what? Free SHS. We're going to give
that's for the people to choose.
Anyway,
and I'm sure that we will do well. I mean, when I look at the opposition, I'm saying, well, what we took over was not great. Bad headwinds, didn't manage it well. We have done what we have done these 5-6 years that you have seen. We have encountered 2 incidents that globally have not happened before, and we are trying to manage through this period. That is going to call for some consolidation and some hard truths as to how to go forward. And this is what we are really encouraging Ghanaians to understand.
You're still watching The Hard Truth. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You are still watching The Hard Truth. Honorable Kenneth Ofori-Atta is still here. Ken.
Hi.
On NAPCO, you have stated that, it will end by September 1st, and it breaks my heart a lot this year. What plans have government or your government put in place to pay the allowances, which has been in arrest for months?
Great question. I mean, I think NAPCO 3.5 change years ago, 100,000 people, sort of the greatest outreach to mostly people who had graduated and were at home. The intention was very clear that within 3 years, it gives you a transition period, you learn certain new skills, and you go out there in the world. I think we then extended it for a year or so. And we're saying, it's a great opportunity has been given, by September 1st, it's a cut-off date. And those who are interested in joining the YouStart program.
And that means that we'll be having over 100,000 graduates becoming unemployed.
Right now you don't have, I think about 35,000 or so have already transited, through doing what they are doing. And what we are saying is that by that time, you can also apply into the YouStart program. I think truly it's important that when government, gives you opportunity to go to senior high, gives you opportunity to go to college, jobs are not readily available, and gives you an opportunity to do that. It comes for with a transition for others to also be able to benefit. Because that's quite a bit.
So you're expecting these graduates to take advantage of the YouStart initiative, you just mentioned that, but not all of them have, entrepreneurial spirit. So will the government be facilitating this? And
the YouStart
is there
program,
a special exit program?
No, the YouStart program constitutes the Ghana Enterprise Agency and the National Entrepreneurship Program, being the leads with regards to skills training, startup packs, access to capital, etc. So that's all a holistic thing, and we expect the transition to happen like anybody else to join from the district level right up to the urban centers. So it's an exciting new vehicle.
You haven't answered my question. Not everyone has that entrepreneurial flair.
That's why I mentioned that there'll be training, etc.
They're training them. So you bring your idea, they'll train you, and then they give you some funds.
And the banks also will have a program of that nature, which has training, etc., to be able to help with the transition. IT is going to be very important in all of this, and that'll be part of it. I think we need to move into an era of entrepreneurship because clearly state institutions cannot handle all of the 10 million people, 10.5 million people between the ages of 15 and 35. We need to find ways in which not one employer employing 1,000 people, but 1,000 employers.
It's a worthy, it's a worthy intervention. But considering the failures that similar interventions faced in the past, is there a guarantee for success for this new initiative?
The issue really is that you can't stop trying. You can't. And whether you go to Vietnam or Malaysia or whatever, it all has to start from somewhere and pick up. The flywheel, I was an entrepreneur. So it's not like one is doing it in a vacuum. And I came from New York wanting to start an investment bank. Very little resources, difficult political environment. My cousin, who was a contractor, gave me a room, in Cantamanto. That's where we started our bank.
Yeah, but successive government, I get that. But successive government also started it, but yielded the results were unimpressive.
But it doesn't mean that, successive government have done stuff. We are also being able to have growth rates that have not been achieved before. We've developed a development bank that is now real. It didn't seem like it could happen. The flagship programs are also different. They didn't look like they could happen. So I don't think we are a nation of people who give up because people failed in the past. We'll never
similar programs again in the past suffered limited or irregular funding.
Right.
How secure and sustainable again are the funding sources for the program?
Yeah, of course it's going to depend to a certain extent on our revenue generation. That is true, but we also had a combination of the banks participating and then development partners also participating. So that together, we believe will have this powerful intervention going forward. But we need to find a way to move ourselves into entrepreneurship.
In finding the way, making the program work would require keeping partisan and political interferences at bay, since these are showways for or to encourage wastage and corruption, which would ultimately, I would say, cause the program to fail. How do you intend to achieve this?
I think, it's almost like saying, things did not work in the past, so they cannot work in future. I don't think so. When I look at people like Kosi Yanka and co managing GEA, I'm confident in their abilities. The type of planning that we have done for this, I'm also very confident that we can
What of
push this forward.
a private partnership, partner with a company, a private company who's already into that?
Yeah, I mean, in this, I think we have KPMG as an assessor going through that, and the issue of having a steering committee to look at how things are going to be important.
Not someone who oversees it. I mean, a partner who does it, so that government will just have to give them money. So we want to employ XYZ. You've done it before.
That's
you have a track record.
Idea.
So why can't we do that?
It's an interesting idea. Maybe that has to be contemplated.
Great.
In terms of an add-on. Yeah.
As it stands now, about 65% of the labor force are not searching for jobs, because of lack of faith in government. This is according to Ghana Statistical. They are not 65% lack of faith in government. This is according to Ghana Statistical Service. Are you saying again that 65% of the labor force can apply, and that it is guaranteed that they will get the loan from the YouStart program?
No, I'm not saying that. I mean, I'm talking about 10.5 million people between the ages of 15 and 35. And clearly, I don't know where part of the globe you can have a program that would absorb that. But can you start and then pick up and deepen the financial services system, deepen training so that more people will be incentivized to look for jobs? Likely, the poll was talking about where will you get jobs in government-related sectors. And we are saying, let's begin to shift that. How do you get the macroeconomy stable enough? How do you get access to financing? Because people are really entrepreneurial if they can have access to financing and appropriate training. And this is what this intervention is meant to
The ultimate
achieve.
is to provide about 1 million jobs. But how many entrepreneurs, first of all, are you looking at funding to provide these 1 million jobs?
Yeah. I mean, typical SME, let's say you have an SME, how many people do you employ?
10.
10, So one funds you, and that's what, 10 people. So assuming you fund, 100,000 people? So it is that type of multiplier that one is going to be looking at, because really, in most societies, it's about SMEs.
No, so I want to know the number. So how many people are you employing? We're employing 100 people. We're estimating that 100 people will give us X or 1 million jobs. Have you done the math on that?
What do you mean by 100 people?
You said 1 million jobs in all.
1 million jobs
how
in
many
3
entrepreneurs?
years.
Right.
Okay.
So how many entrepreneurs are you?
mean at the very least, you are looking at about maybe 250,000 people that you find a way to fund, assuming that each of them may employ 4 people also over that period.
Assuming.
Yeah.
Assuming.
But, that's the assumption. Those are the numbers that we are using, and we have
250,000 employing 4 people each. Now, let's look at the recouping and recovery of these loans. This has been a serious problem with entrepreneurial interventions by government. How would you tackle this?
Okay. So what are we talking about? So we are talking about
payments of loans.
About we Ghanaians on our attitude to whether we pay back and get into formal systems. I think things are changing with digitalization. People used to be able to hide. You don't know the person's address, you don't know where he is, different names. All of that, as you see with digitalization, are now beginning to come to where you can identify where people live. You know their names, you know their ID numbers, they are linked to telephones, they are linked to bank accounts. That is all a development in the society that we didn't used to have before. And so that becomes important as opposed to response to contracts. And we have to believe the Ghanaians will rise up to that occasion. So yes, in entrepreneurship, you are bound to get failures, but failures generally not because one is skipping. So you have to de-risk and you have to acknowledge that some will not work. But truly a nation has to move towards entrepreneurship to be able to absorb the demographics that we have.
You have said that you look at the, as life as a political emancipation, economic emancipation, and a spiritual uplift. I can see you're a very highly spiritual person. Kenneth, would Jesus be happy with you on the way you've managed the economy? Finally.
I think it's an issue of willingness and obedience to what Christ would like us to do. Honest, good job done over that period, yes. Holy Spirit guiding us to the things we do, yes. Am I confident that He's leading us in the right direction? Unequivocally. I think difficult times, His power will emanate, and I'm very confident about where He will take us.
So Jesus is happy with you with how you manage the economy?
You know, it's very difficult to think that one will be holy enough for total acceptance. You're constantly praying that you have the courage and the spirit to go on. But more importantly, you know, in all of this technical stuff, it's a clear love for country and understanding of what somebody like me could become finance minister, and therefore who in Fantiakwa could also do that. And therefore, what should we be doing 18 hours a day to ensure we give that opportunity to people to be able to get to the levels that we are.
Ken,
so
really, Jesus be happy with you on how you manage the economy?
It's up to Jesus to declare.
It's up to Jesus to declare.
I can do the best that I can, but I'm very just honored and blessed to have this position, and mine is to obey and do the best I can, you know, with His guidance.
In 10 seconds, what would you tell Ghanaians who are upset and are angry at the government? What would you say to them?
Yeah. You know, I think really there's reason for disappointment, but I think it should really be put on the backdrop of where we are in the global economy. The question then is, would Akosua-Atta's government be able to lead us through this? And I'm confident that we will, because we did meet an IMF program in which we exited correctly. And this one too, we are going to confront it head on and be able to do that. So let's have faith, let's dig into our resilience as a people, and we would also guide the way forward.
I'm smiling because I have a million questions when it comes to you know, IMF and all, you know, paying the debt and all that, but it's a pleasure. Thank you so much, sir, for talking to the Heart. I'm grateful. I'm grateful to you. So you've had it all from the Finance Minister, Honorable Kenneth Ofori-Atta. Are you convinced by government's plans to turning things around? Guys, listen, Ghana belongs to all of us. It's not just for NDC or NPP. So let's take advantage of the YouStart program to gain access to funding and training and technical support to start, build and grow your businesses. So share your thoughts with us on our social media platforms on the screen. I'll say thank you, a huge thank you to Ruth and Fifi from the Finance Ministry for making this possible, guys. I'm grateful. Thank you so much. Thank you, Karen Harper, for making my beautiful dress, and for all your production needs and all the other things you want to do production-wise. Enak Studios is a place for you. Call the numbers on your screens right now, and you've been watching The Hard Truth. My name is Nana Akosua Konadu Asante-Samuels. Catch a repeat of the program on Saturday at 2 p.m. Thank you. Good evening. Goodbye.